Welcome to Corporate Competitor, presented by Forbes Books, the podcast where the world's greatest executives share how the lessons they learned playing sports shaped their leadership. After more than 200 episodes with CEOs and senior leaders like Chick-fil-A Chairman Dan Cathy, Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan, and former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, one thing is clear. Whether they were inducted into their sports hall of fame or hung up their cleats after high school, sports has been a powerful, shared foundation for success. I'm your host, Don Yeager, and each week, in partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, we bring you genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with influential leaders so you can apply their insights to elevate your leadership. With me for today's episode is Adam Whitty, the CEO of Forbes Books and the founder of Advantage Media. In 2005, Adam created a done-for-you system to simplify book publishing for busy business leaders. His innovative approach to publishing caught the attention of Forbes, leading to the creation of Forbes Books, where he helps prominent executives around the world become authors and establish greater authority in their fields. Adam was named to Inc.'s 30 Under 30 list of America's coolest entrepreneurs and has helped more than 2,000 executives publish books. His leadership approach is rooted in the competitive spirit he developed as a high school basketball player, and I'm excited to dive into lessons he learned on the court. Make sure to check out corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes for the downloadable PDF with my favorite quotes and reflection questions that will help you apply today's lessons.
The best team does not always win. It's the best team at working together as a team in that moment that wins. Number one job of the leader, clarity. What are we here for? What are we working towards? And then alignment. Every single person in the company, from bottom to top, is fully aligned on that goal. If you can have that, there is nothing that team can't accomplish.
Adam, thanks for joining us.
Don, what a pleasure to be with you.
You know, I'm thrilled to have you on the show to celebrate this exciting new partnership. As I shared in a recent LinkedIn video, I've only been able to, over the years, take on a handful of book projects each year. But now, with you and I teaming up together and the incredible resources and expertise that you've built into your team, we're going to make it easier than ever to help people share their stories. So to kick things off, why do you believe every great business leader should view themselves as a media company?
One of the fundamental questions I ask in my book, The Authority Advantage, is, are you an operator with something to sell or a thought leader with something to teach? In the book, we talk about 4 different types of leaders. Most listening to this podcast, Don, are probably what we call the behind-the-scenes servant leader, meaning their intentions are pure. They want to help their team. They want to help their organization, but they are behind the scenes. To truly build trust at scale, you have to become what we call that mission-driven thought leader. The more trust, the more impact you want to have with your audience, the more you have to be seen. We think that every CEO, every entrepreneur that wants to achieve something great for their organization, for their team, for themselves, they have to see themselves as a media company. If they are truly a thought leader with something to teach, they have to create content. They have to provide answers to the problems that are keeping their customers and their audience up at night.
You know, it's funny. I remember several years ago, as I was leaving Sports Illustrated and beginning this journey of building out blogs and podcasts and books and all the different things, that somebody suggested that exact phrase to me. Don, you need to become your own little media company. And at the time, it seemed outlandish. It was a little overwhelming. But then you start realizing what do media companies do? Create content. And in the creation of content, you are expanding opportunity for influence. Am I interpreting that properly?
You are. You are creating content that adds value to people's lives. If you are that mission driven thought leader, you have stories, you have passion, you have knowledge that, if shared, can help others improve their lives and the lives of people around them. So many of our authors have said to me, if my book changes just one person's life, it will have been worth doing.
Mm.
I would encourage all leaders to look at it that way. Now, maybe it's not a book. Maybe it's your blog. Maybe it's your podcast. Maybe it's your speaking, some other form of content. But if your content can change one person's life for the better, would it not be worth doing? Yes. And if you see it that way, then not only is it a lot of fun, but it's very fulfilling.
Yeah. So you're a young man, but you started a publishing house 20 years ago. It's really crazy to imagine. And you found some really incredible success. But what really sets you apart, in my opinion, is that you don't look at it as publishing. There's a lot of publishers out there. There's printers. There's people whose job is to take words and make it into something that will end up on a shelf. But you really focus not just on helping those books come to life, but on using those books to establish authority in their fields. What inspired you to develop that authority framework and look at not just printing books, but actually using the book as almost a catalyst to do far more than that?
Don, I wish I could take the credit for the brilliance. It was really listening to our customers.
Mm.
Early on in my career, as I was talking to our authors, what I realized very quickly was that they all wanted a book. But the reason that they wanted a book wasn't because they thought they were going to become a New York Times bestselling author and they were going to put their feet up on the table and watch the royalty checks come in. They really wanted to be a published author to build their credibility, their thought leadership, and they wanted to use that enhanced thought leadership as a tool to grow their impact, grow their business, grow their influence in a positive way. So we realized that the book was the vehicle, but the outcome was thought leadership and what we then came to call authority. Hey, you really can't spell the word authority without the word author.
Unless you misspell it.
Unless you misspell it. And you, as the author of over 40 books, realize that when you write the book on the topic, it is the platform that you can then build so much more from.
Yeah. And in fact, I love the way authority became so important to the way that you all have built your business. This idea that there are multiple elements that allow you to become seen as an expert and authority in a space. But you built a software program whereby answering a series of questions, a person can assess their authority index, kind of like your FICO score for authority. And we're going to put a link in the show notes to that. I know it's in the early stages. There's more testing and other kinds of work being done. But I want people to be able to take it so that they can grow as well. Tell me, how does that authority index concept work? And what have you learned since you started putting it together?
Everybody listening to this podcast is a high achieving leader. And what high achievers have in common is that they are competitive, not just with themselves, but with others. We believe in the game of business that transcends. So the authority index and the authority score was to allow a leader to benchmark their authority and then see how they compare with others. Now, the first part of that, where we can benchmark your authority, that's what we already have done. You will see where you fall on that authority index. The next phase of our development is actually going to be allowing you to benchmark yourself against peers.
And that's going to be a volume play.
That's exactly right. We need massive amounts of data. But when you think about someone's authority, It comes in a variety of different ways. One way is earned media. What share of media are you earning your way into? How frequently is the media coming to you and asking for you to comment on or contribute to a story? Another part of authority would be your own content. Are you writing and publishing books? Are you writing and publishing a blog? Do you have a podcast that you produce and publish? Are you a speaker? How much content is being produced and published online? Then there's something that we call authority by association. You build your authority by standing next to others and brands that have more authority than you do. And their authority, Don, will actually kind of rub off on you.
Right.
Those are just 3 out of about 7 different criteria that we use to measure and then index your relative level of authority. And then, of course, the goal here is that you're always working to build your authority. Similar to being the number one search result on Google, authority is never a constant. It doesn't stay in one place. It moves up and it moves down. So business leaders must intentionally invest time and resources into continuing to build and enhance their authority. Otherwise, if you simply leave it to the powers that be, it's going to begin to fall.
Authority by association. You know, a few years ago, because you had built enough of your own authority, you had an opportunity to associate with Forbes, one of the great media brands and one of the great business brands in American history. What have you seen it do for your company to associate yourself with a brand like Forbes?
Brand is a necessity, not a luxury. For some, that may be counterintuitive. But today, more than ever, consumers choose brands that they know, they like, and that they trust. While Advantage Media is a wonderful company, the brand Advantage does not have the resonance, the ID, and the prestige that a brand like Forbes has. So we partnered with Forbes in 2017 and built Forbes Books, which today is the preeminent independent business book publishing brand. That authority by association created tailwind, not just for our Forbes Books business, but also for the Advantage Media business as well. It created credibility, created believability, it created trust, unlike many other things could, because people who already were favorably looking upon Advantage, as soon as they saw the relationship with Forbes, in their mind, they said, well, if you're good enough for Forbes, you're good enough for me.
Yeah. I shared this on a podcast recording we did a number of months ago with the children of Walter Payton, the great running back, the Chicago Bears. When he chose me, I probably didn't deserve it, but that he chose me changed my career completely. The authority by association. Over the course of time, the number of other athletes specifically who have said, if Walter Payton chose you, I mean, how would I not?
Great lesson for all leaders. Who we associate ourselves with matters.
Yeah, so powerful. You know, you recently launched your own podcast, Build Your Authority. And in episode 1, you mentioned that you want to equip people to die empty when it comes to sharing knowledge and experience.
Yeah, so I don't want to take credit for this. This was really inspired by an author of ours that I was speaking with many months ago. This was a gentleman who had achieved significant success in his career. He was probably in his mid to late 60s. And he said, you know, Adam, I've achieved everything that I could have dreamed of financially. I've achieved all that I could have dreamed of from a business success perspective. And I have accumulated so much knowledge and so much experience that I know can be of service to others. If I die with all of this still inside of me, shame on me.
Mm.
And that's a travesty to everyone that I could have touched and everyone that I could have helped. And this was a man that was doing this for all of the right reasons.
It's funny because if you listen to the first part of that conversation, it could almost sound egotistical.
Mm-hmm.
But if you really listen to the back half of it, it's a recognition that you are in possession of something that isn't really yours.
He had a perspective that was remarkable. Think about ego. A lot of times I'll hear people say, I just don't have the ego to write a book. That's a very simple way of looking at it. If you leave it inside of you, shame on you. Don't use the excuse of, well, I don't have a big enough ego to do that. If you truly have something that others can benefit from, a belief in yourself that you can share what you know to help others, you owe it to yourself and others to share that. I believe it's your duty to share that with others. Now, that doesn't have to be in the form of a book. That could be volunteering in a local school or at the YMCA. You choose the outlet. But if you want to create impact at scale, for many, sharing what you know through a book, through podcasts, through blogging, through speaking is a phenomenal way to do that. So that when I die, I can look at myself and say, I've died empty. It's a pretty cool way to look at it.
That would be a heck of a tombstone, wouldn't it? Here lies Adam Whitty, died empty. Notice I threw you in the tombstone, not me.
Yeah, thanks.
What I love about the power of using the book or whatever it might be to reach people at scale. I know you've had the chance to spend some time with John Maxwell recently. You talked to Stephen Covey. I had the opportunity to work with him years ago. Both of them used to say that that's what drove them to write books, that as much as they could speak and as many times as they might be out, they could multiply that times 10 if you could put it in words and let it sit for the test of time. The idea that a product like that can benefit people at scale is not just true for your author you're mentioning, but it's true for some of the best of all time.
I would add to that, Don, that the author that I was speaking of that encouraged me and others to die empty, John Maxwell, who you just mentioned, they have ego. I have ego and you have ego. But the ego is in fulfillment. The ego is the desire to feel fulfilled by helping other people.
Mm.
And that's the important difference. Using ego to drive a mission of fulfillment, that is a divine and just reason. Using your ego to fulfill a desire and drive for attention and notoriety and fame and fortune, that is probably misguided.
Mm.
So yes, we all have ego, but how do we use our ego to create impact at scale? When you do that, it creates a level of fulfillment that is indescribable.
I love it. Ego doesn't have to be a negative thing. So you were born in Annapolis, Maryland. You moved to Orlando when you were 8 years old. And there your family became big fans of the Orlando Magic. And it looks like you could have a good year to be a fan of the Orlando Magic this year. But while in Orlando, you played on your high school basketball team, where I read a quote that you said, I spent as much time on the bench as I might ever spend on the court. What lessons did playing basketball teach you both on and off the court?
The best team does not always win.
Mm.
During my high school basketball days, there were teams that we should have beat because we were a better team on paper that we would lose to.
Mm.
And then there were teams that we were completely outmatched. They were far bigger physically. They were far better athletically, and we would win that game. It's not the best team physically, the best team athletically that wins. It's the best team at working together as a team in that moment that wins. As an executive, as an entrepreneur, as a leader, I have never forgotten that. It's all about working together that is the secret sauce to achieve success, whether it be in business or in athletics. So the two most important things to creating an effective working together environment are, one, clarity. Everybody knows what are we working for and what are we working towards.
Mm.
In athletics, that seems pretty simple. The goal is to win the game. Okay. But in business, it's a little more opaque. Man, if you asked 100 people in most businesses and said, what is the goal? What are we working towards? It wouldn't shock me if you got at least 50 to 60 different answers to that question. Clarity. What are we together working towards? The second thing, Don, alignment. So it's one thing to be clear, but it's a whole nother thing to be aligned. Everybody that's in the boat is your team. The boat are the employees that are in your organization. Everybody in the boat is rowing in the same direction with vigor, force. They're rowing with precision. If half the people in the rowboat don't even have their oars in the water, you're not winning the race.
Right. And we know there's some opportunities in our business where we got people who don't have their oars. They probably didn't bring their oar to work with them.
How about the people that are in the boat that have their oars in the water purposefully rowing in the opposite direction?
Right.
The number one job of the leader is clarity, being crystal clear. What are we here for? What are we working towards? And then alignment, working themselves and with the executive team to make sure that every single person in the company, from bottom to top, is fully aligned on that goal. If you can have that level of alignment, there is nothing that team can't accomplish.
Can you tell me a story where a leadership lesson that you learned from maybe one of your coaches in basketball influenced the decision you've made since you've become your own leader?
This is an example of what not to do as a leader, Don. Very tight game, 5 seconds left. We were down by 1 point, and we had the ball with an opportunity to win the game. Coach, mind you, was a volunteer. It was not a paid position. The coach was not a paid employee of the school. So I suppose there's some grace that's given. But coach brought everybody together, 5 seconds left. And in the huddle, he said, okay, guys, we have a big opportunity. We have 5 seconds left. Let's go make something happen. That was it.
That was the play that was drawn up.
Let's go make something happen. That was the play. There was absolutely no direction other than that.
Right.
So leaders must lead. Leading is not just giving somebody a pat on the back and saying, rah, rah, rah. Leading is giving direction on what you need people to do. The clearer you can be in that direction, the better it is for the person and the better it is for the team.
Wow. It's a great example, but let's get to what matters. Did you make something happen?
We did not. We lost the game.
Okay. Unfortunately, sometimes the best lessons occur when we don't get what we set out to do.
As was the case with this.
So you might not have pursued a career in basketball.
No. I may be tall, but that doesn't mean that I can jump.
Yeah. But you certainly had a mentor who knew the sport well, with one of my all-time favorite people, Pat Williams. Pat recently passed, was one of the great humans on our planet in the way that he poured into so many other people. And as you know, Pat was a dear friend of mine as well. Can you tell us how some of his advice actually influenced the direction of your career?
It all began with the book. Pat Williams, Making Magic. The story of his creating the Orlando Magic basketball team. I was 16 or 17 years old. And after I read the book, I was completely enthralled. I wanted to have a career in professional sports. And I wrote Pat Williams a letter.
Wow.
I wrote him a letter to thank him for writing the book. And I had 2 questions for him. I really didn't think that I would ever hear back because this guy was very busy. He was a celebrity traveling all around the world at that point. And I got a letter back from Pat and a signed basketball from the team. He replies with the answers to those 2 questions in the signed ball. So I write him a letter back, thanking him and asking if I could take him to lunch.
It's a pretty gutsy thing for a 16-year-old to do.
He said yes. I took Pat Williams to lunch at 16 years of age, and he and I had a beautiful friendship for the next 25 years. He was always so positive.
Always.
Man,
Guys fighting cancer over and over again, and it never felt like he was having a bad day.
never felt like he was having a bad day. I remember he said to me once, he said, Adam, attitudes come in two flavors, positive and negative. Every morning when you wake up, you get to choose.
Mm.
I've never forgotten that. Attitude is a choice. Every morning, we have the luxury and the blessing of being able to choose whether it's going to be a good day or whether it's going to be a bad day.
Wow. So powerful. So out of this lunch at 16 years old, I could just see little 16-year-old Adam Whitty. Well, not little since you're tall, but showing up with a list of questions.
Oh, yeah. Pat believed in life with a big yes and a small no.
Mm.
He was always encouraging me to think bigger and dream bigger. I remember very early, I had gone off to Clemson. I had started a business. And when I was out of Clemson, I was approached with this opportunity to get into publishing, which wasn't something that I thought I would do, but it was a door that opened that almost, in a way, sought me out. And we were having lunch, and I said, Pat, what do I know about publishing? I had spent 2 summers as an intern for a publishing company, and Pat knew that. And he said, Adam, you know more than 99.9% of all humans about the topic of publishing.
You actually have Pat's voice there. That's pretty good.
He said, you're an expert. You know what you need to know. You can create a business out of this. And then he said, Adam, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Mm.
I wasn't thinking big enough. I wasn't believing enough in myself. And Pat was the external motivating force that helped me believe a little bit more.
You know, one of his challenges was for you to go to the National Speakers Association annual convention and hang out a shingle saying that you were ready to help publish people's books.
Yep. I was just starting the business, and Pat said, Adam, you need to go to the NSA, the National Speakers Association. Everybody there wants to be a speaker, is a speaker, and they all need a book. And he said, quote, that will be the golden goose that lays the golden eggs for the rest of time. So, not really having a better plan, Don, I go and set up shop at the National Speakers Association convention. Mind you, I'm 23 years old, and I have a tabletop booth that looks like a science fair project. It was the trifold booth that sat up on a table with a little curtain.
Did you have a little volcano in the middle that exploded? That would be awesome.
Well, here's what I did that was even better. I had not published a book on my own at that time. So the company that I was an intern for, I went to their website and I printed off covers of the books that they had published. And because I was an intern for that company and felt I played a small part in the creation of those books, I put those books up on the trifold tabletop booth display. I go to this conference and I walk away 3.5 days later with 13 signed contracts and 13 deposit checks. But I did not have a bank account. So the next day I get back to Charleston and I go to the Wachovia branch that was closest to my apartment. I walk in and I ask the lady if I could set up a business checking account. And she looks at me somewhat skeptically. She says, well, son, you need a minimum deposit of at least $100. I think I can do that. And I pulled out the 13 deposit checks, which totaled more than $23,000. Now, at that point, she was either thinking this kid is the next Doogie Howser, or she's thinking this kid must be a drug dealer. I'm not sure which of the two.
Right, exactly.
But that's where it all started.
That's so classic. You know, Pat Williams went on to write a whole series of books in which he said leadership lessons from Bear Bryant, leadership lessons from Bobby Bowden. And when he chose to publish all those books a few years later, he came to you.
Yeah, Pat and I shared a love of sports. We actually shared a love of college sports. Pat, of course, was a baseball player at Wake Forest.
Yep.
Many people don't know for 1 year, he was the voice of the Clemson Tiger football team in 1971. He was hired by legendary coach Frank Howard. So Pat and I, every time we would get together, we would not only talk about sports, but we would talk about what are the top 10 books on the list. Pat, of course, had written over 120 books at the time of his passing. And to be that prolific as an author, you have to have systems and processes. Pat had a system. He would find a incredible leader, Bear Bryant, Bobby Bowden, Tom Osborne, Vince Lombardi. These are coaches that are regarded as not only the best on the field, but in terms of true leaders, exhibited the qualities that we would find remarkable in a leader. Pat would send out a letter to about 400 of that coach's former players, former coaches, former administrators with a request: call my cell phone number and give me your best Bear Bryant story. Give me your best Bobby Bowden story. He would spend 5 to 10 minutes on the phone. At Florida State, it was with Warwick Dunn. Give me your best Bobby Bowden story. 5-10 minutes. And then what he would do is he would take all of these stories and he would organize them based on what leadership attribute were they demonstrating. Then he would organize all of those on 5x7 note cards, send it to his typist, and his typist would send it back to him in raw form, in which he and his writing partner would then organize it and turn it into a written manuscript. Incredible process to see.
Oh, I love it. So your relationship with Pat was an early example of the importance of surrounding yourself with people who inspire you, who challenge you. And I know now one of the aspects of your life that's important is your relationship in organizations like EO and YPO. How has surrounding yourself with people in those organizations shaped your approach to entrepreneurship?
Success leaves clues.
I say that all the time. I love that phrase.
When you're able to get up close and personal with people that have had success and just watch, just listen, just observe, you will learn so much. I am a big believer in peer groups. Mastermind groups would be another word that some people would use. In fact, I'm a member of YPO. I'm a member of EO. I'm a member of an organization called GoBundance. And then on top of that, I'm a part of 3 mastermind groups. At first, you might say, gee, Adam, that probably is a bit too much. But what I gain from association with all of those groups is multifold. I'm learning a lot. Success leaves clues. I'm contributing a lot, which then helps power for me a sense of fulfillment. Entrepreneurship is the greatest force for good in the world. So being able to help other entrepreneurs have success is something that fuels me, something that drives me. But community, that's key. When you're a part of a community, you have a chance to get deep and intimate with peers, those that are having success in their business, those that are struggling in business, because it's not always easy.
Yeah.
You get to see how they are dealing with it, how they're reacting to it. When you have brothers and sisters that have been there, done that, that have the battle scars just like you to prove it, there is a sense of peace that comes to someone when they are a part of a community. And to achieve your best externally, you need that sense of peace internally. Great peer groups can do that for you.
A sense of peace. That's a great way to put it. You know, one of the questions we've asked every guest over the course of 200 plus episodes now is teams in corporate speak. It's overused. People talk about their team, and most organizations, even in sports, sadly, are a lot of individuals playing for their own contract. In your book, Relentless Implementation, You talk about getting a team to work together for maximum performance.
Mhm.
If you were coaching me as a person who's just inherited a group of people, maybe not all heading in the same direction, on how to get them to become a team,
Yep.
walk me through that.
It starts with empathy.
Mm,
A leader first, especially if they're inheriting a team, needs to lean in, listen, and learn. You have to have empathy for the job that people are doing, whether they're succeeding or whether they're failing. If they're failing, we need to understand why is it they're failing? Is it them that are incapable of doing that job, executing that task? Is it a system or a process that is failing them? Or is it colleagues and teammates
mm.
that are failing them? If you start with empathy by leaning in, listening, and learning, and truly understanding where each person is, when you then have to make corrective actions, which might be players on this team that need to go.
Mhm.
There are new players that I need to recruit and bring in. We need to change the role, the position that some of these players are in. Hey, you're going from small forward to power forward, or vice versa. Empathy immediately gains you respect, trust, and it gains for you as a leader credibility. It doesn't mean that people like your decisions, but it means that they respect how you got to those decisions and are much more apt to listen, to ultimately support and follow.
Empathy starts with empathy. I love that. Adam, I'm excited about the partnership that we have ahead for us and what it portends for people who want to be able to tell their story. I'm grateful that as part of that partnership, you are actually going to become a presenting sponsor of this podcast as we continue to grow it. More than anything, I just want to thank you today for being a corporate competitor with us.
Well, Don, this has been such a great pleasure. And let me say that you, my friend, are one of the best storytellers that I've had the chance to ever meet. Your ability to help leaders tell their story to make a positive impact to the world is unparalleled. This is a 1 + 1 = 10. By being able to work together, we will help more leaders share their stories, passion, and knowledge to make an impact. Our entire civilization and the progress that we have made as mankind is based upon sharing knowledge, learning from their successes, and learning from those failures and passing it to the next generation.
Mm.
And one of the most effective ways that we have done that is through storytelling.
Mm.
And if we don't openly share those successes and failures, the next generation isn't going to learn and they'll be worse off for it.
Wow. Thank you. I look forward to what's ahead.
Thank you, Don.
I hope you can hear as a result of that conversation why I was so enthused to become partners with Adam and with Forbes Books and what they're going to do for others and what I'm excited about being able to jump in with. But I took a number of really great nuggets from this. Number one, his entire discussion about establishing authority by association. Who you stand next to allows you to enjoy a little of that light that is shown on them, and that light then shines on you. And as a result, you gain something. So who are you standing next to? I also thought that the way he described the importance of his alignment is as good as his company was. Aligning with Forbes made such a difference for them. And it has. It certainly has allowed them to stand out far more greatly than many of the others in that space. Brand is a necessity, not a luxury. Consumers choose brands they know, like, and trust. That really hit me because too often we're told it's the other way around. Brand is a luxury that if you can become one, that's good, but just be solid. No, he hits it slightly differently. And I loved the way that he phrased that. My second big takeaway was the story about dying empty, the author that he was talking to, who actually made that point that if they took everything that they had experienced in life with them and didn't in some way share it, that's on them. That's a shame on me moment. again, somewhat counterintuitive. There are a lot of people who go, oh gosh, doesn't it feel ego driven to be the one out there writing, telling my story, doing a book? No, actually, it is not. If you possess something that would make them better, it's your greatest gift to actually give it to them. Your real goal should be when you pass that your tombstone can say died empty. Pretty awesome. And then the last one, when he told the story about his high school basketball coach, down by 1, 5 seconds go, pulled the team together, go out there and make something happen. With a lack of clarity, the team didn't know what to do. Go out there and make something happen is not an instruction. It's a hope. Hope is not a strategy. Make something happen didn't get them what they needed, which was a game plan, clarity on where they were going to go and who was going to take the shot, alignment on how everybody else would make sure they were in the right place to be able to make that happen. So are you bringing clarity? Are you bringing alignment to those you get an opportunity to lead? It's the number one responsibility of leaders, he said, and I would wholeheartedly concur. Adam Whitty, very excited to have him on the podcast today. I hope you gained as much as I did. Thank you for being a corporate competitor with us, and I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Feedback helps us spread the insights of our guests to a wider audience. It actually increases our ratings. Thank you so much for those who have done so in the past. And catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.